When Moses is overcoming some of his anxiety about going to Egypt, and that questioning time between he and God back in Exodus, when God tells him, you're the person who's going to go back and free my people, Moses starts with, well, who am I that I can go and free your people? And God says, you're the person I've chosen, at which point Moses asks, well, who are you? What is the name that I should give these people? And that's when God gives him the divine name, Etyeh, Esher, Etyeh. God says, it's usually translated, I am what I am, or I am that I am. It is a really complicated interpretive challenge, really, to look at that name. But that name ends up getting standardized as Yahweh, or YHWH in English. It's known as the Tetragrammaton, which just means 4 letters. It is a name that, for fear of blasphemy, it was not pronounced by Jews. This was the personal name of God. Up to now, we've talked about Elohim, that generic name for God. Any nation can have an Elohim. You can have the Elohim of Egypt, and the Elohim of Canaan, the Elohim of Assyria. But Yahweh, that name, that personal name of God, that identifies this God of Israel different than any other God around. As a result, the Jews didn't want to blaspheme God's name, so they didn't say it out loud. They wouldn't actually speak it. Whenever they encounter the name within the text, they would just say the word Adonai, which means Almighty, instead of actually reading it out. Now remember when we talked about the Masoretic text and how the Masoretes were the ones who added vowels to the text. So when it came time to put vowels around the holy name, what do? Because they were concerned you could actually be reading the Bible and read it with a bad attitude and say God's name and take it in vain. So they wanted to ensure that God's name would never be pronounced, would never be taken out of context. So they had the consonants YHWH, Yod He Vav He in Hebrew, and they inserted the vowels from Adonai, the Ah and the O and the I. And once you put the vowels from Adonai in the consonants for Yahweh and run it through Hebrew and Greek and Latin and German, by the time it gets to English, the name that we have is Jehovah. Jehovah is a name that was created by Masoretic Jews to prevent the accidental pronunciation of God's name. In other words, it was made up. It was a made-up word to make sure you didn't say God's name correctly. Because if you said it correctly, there was a chance you could actually take it out of context. So that is the origin of the name Jehovah.